Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using an older My Creative Scrapbook kit. This kit is from September of 2023, so almost a year old. But I have a couple of videos that I haven't gotten a chance to voice over and put up on my channel, actually a lot of videos, and this is one of them. This was a kit that I really loved working with. It featured the 49 End Market collection called Sunburst, and I've purchased this collection several times since I got the kit because I absolutely love the papers and the embellishments. I love summer scrapbooking. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about the limited edition kit. I get a lot of the beautiful collections that manufacturers I really like are coming out with. To back the cut file, I used one of the pattern papers. It was kind of a newsprint look, and I used the stress oxides in order to make them all different colors. I used twisted citron, picked raspberry, carved pumpkin, and ripe persimmon. And then off camera, I backed the rest of the cut file. You could see it off to the left. There was a huge wave. That's to the left of the title. And so I used a whole bunch of different shades of blue from one of the pattern papers, and I tried to vary the shades so that there would be some darker waves next to some lighter waves. Now I'm using some gel glue to attach those letters that I just inked down to the cut file. I absolutely love stitching on cut files. I just love the texture that it gives to them. So I cut out another piece to put behind the cut file. This one is solid. I didn't do the inner cuts. And then that way when I punch holes in the cut file, the thread won't pull through. Sometimes I've damaged cut files when I skip this step. So I put a lot of gel glue on the back of the cut file that I've backed with the pattern paper, and I layer it on top of that solid cut file. And then I make sure that it's perfectly lined up, and then I allow it to dry. Then I did some stitching on the word ocean, and I also did a lot of stitching on the waves. And that will be visible in a little while. I probably should have shown it to you before I started on the background, but it will be visible soon. For my background, I'm using this beautiful piece of pattern paper from the kit. I wanted to add a few touches to it, so I'm also using the stencil that we received and some distress oxides, and I'm adding a little bit of color to the background. And I started off with a distress oxide called Scattered Straw. It's a light yellow color that I thought would be perfect for adding some suns to the lower left-hand side of the layout. And then so that there would be a little variation in the yellow, I added some fossilized amber, which is another distress oxide color. I'm actually holding the page sideways. If you look carefully, you could see that there's some text that goes vertically that should be going horizontally. But when I put the cut file on top of this paper, I really like the way the page looked positioned like this. And the nice thing is that once I have the cut file and all the embellishments on this pattern paper, you really don't see the text in the final layout. And I held it sideways because I tried the paper all different ways with the cut file on top of it, and I really liked it this way the best, so I didn't think that that text would be too noticeable. Now I'm moving on to the right-hand corner where I'm going to add a lot of pink suns to the background. I used a combination of picked raspberry and worn lipstick to make the pink suns. And usually what happens is I start off just thinking I'm going to add a little bit of coloring to the background, and then I add a whole lot. So that's what happened with the pink suns. I added a lot more than I expected to, but I really liked the way that they looked. And then I did the same thing with the blue. To make the blue suns, I used speckled egg and stormy sky. Next, I added some white splatters to the background. I like to use watered down white acrylic paint to make splatters. You can also use gesso, and I'm sure there are many other things that you could do. But I really love the look of white splatters and pretty much any splatters on backgrounds. I think it adds a nice random element to the background. And while on some layouts I'll add white splatters and they're not really noticeable, on this layout you could really see those white splatters, especially on the pink and the blue areas. And then after I added a whole bunch of splatters, I used some gesso and I used a natural sponge that I've had in my stash for a really long time. And I like to use the sponge to dab onto layouts when I want to add a little bit of white to areas that maybe look a little muddy. It was looking a little bit too colorful in the center, and I wanted to whiten out that area. I also wanted to add some splatters in each of the colors that I used. So I watered down some Distress Oxide, and then I used a tiny brush and I began splattering it around the page. And I started out thinking that I would not necessarily match the colors up with the background colors, but then I really liked the way that it looked when I just added the blue to the blue and the pink to the pink, so I stuck with that. To some extent, though, splatters have a mind of their own and they go where they want to go. And so I did get like some blue splatters on the yellow and pink splatters on the blue, but for the most part, I tried to keep them on top of the same color. And then finally, I finished up with the yellow splatters, and then I moved on to the cut file. So that the cut file would be noticeable and stand out against the background, I wanted to add a matte to it. So in order to do that, I used the offset function on my Silhouette Cameo, and that allows you to make a matte. It's the same cut file, but it's just a little bit bigger so that you could see an edge all around the outside of the cut file. And I use this a lot when I want the cut file to be a little bit more noticeable. And because I didn't really need the mat around the wave or the word ocean, I cut that mat into pieces, and I'm only using the pieces that are going to go behind the words the, is, and calling. And so once I have them inked, I use some gel glue and I attach those right down to the cut file. And here you can see that I've done quite a lot of stitching on this cut file. For the letters in the word ocean, I match the color of the thread to the color of the letter. And for the large wave, I use some blue embroidery floss. I didn't stitch every section of the wave, I just stitched some of them because I thought that it would emphasize the ones that I stitched a little bit more than the others. Then I incorporated my photo into the layout. There's already a layering piece behind it. I was going to use this photo on a different layout, and then I changed my mind and decided that it would go better with this layout, so I had already matted it on some white cardstock and added a journaling card or a layering piece behind it. In order to make the sunburst, I'm using this stencil from my stash, and I'm using some modeling paste. And I'm spreading the modeling paste all over the stencil. I'm covering the entire thing. Usually I use pieces of stencils, but in this case, I'm going to make the entire sunburst. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to put a sunburst in the lower left-hand corner. Now, of course, there's only one sun in the sky, but since I've already broken that rule and have suns everywhere on the page, I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to have two starbursts in opposite corners. I'm using some Martha Stewart embossing powder. I wish these embossing powders didn't come in these little teeny tiny vials because it's sometimes hard to get the embossing powder back into the container. And you can see that I'm kind of failing miserably with that and getting embossing powder all over my table, but I was able to salvage most of it. This is embossing powder that I've had for a really long time. I bought it at a discount store, and it's white Martha Stewart embossing powder, and I really love the way that the white looks once it's heat embossed. It just adds a really cool, very, very white look to the background, where modeling paste can be white, but sometimes it doesn't keep its white color, but this really does. So I heat embossed the background, and once again, I'm sorry I didn't show you the final result, but you will see it in a little while. And then I began to work on my photo. So I removed that yellow card that was behind the photo. You could see it's kind of ripped, but that's okay because only a small portion of it is going to be visible at the top. And then I added in a blue paper. I'm going to use that to mat my photo on. And I'm going for a distressed look here, so I use my scissors to roughen up the edges of the paper, and then I also bend down the edges as well. And then once I had those papers layered behind the photo, I was ready to start attaching everything down to the page. And I did a lot of work to the background, but the composition of this layout is very simple. I have my photo in the upper left-hand corner, and then I have the cut file sitting right below it. And I overlap the photo quite a bit with the cut file because all that's to the right of the figure is sand, so I was okay with covering that up. The most important thing to me was showing my daughter and then also the horizon. And now I'm layering some gesso on top of that yellow piece that I have behind the photo because it looked a little bit too bright and it was drawing my eye, I thought, a little bit too much. So I thought I would dull down the color a little bit with the gesso in hopes that it would match the other yellows on the layout a little bit better. And then I decided that I wanted to ink the edges of the photo mat and then also the yellow card that's behind it. And then I was thinking that it would really make sense to bring some pink into this area. So I thought I would use this small piece of pink paper that I had and then distress and ink the edges. And then I'm going to tuck it right behind that yellow strip of paper. And I think that that helps to balance the layout a little bit. Then I realized that in order for the pink paper to match with that yellow paper, I had to distress it a bit more. I picked out a few embellishments to use on the layout. I'm inking all of them with the Distress ink in Vintage Photo. And then I began placing the embellishments on the page. I love this laser cut netting. I think that the other side, which was brown, was supposed to be the front of this embellishment, but I liked the blue side better because I thought that it went well with the waves. And I think it helped to balance out the layout, because we have the blue waves and now we have some other blue on the layout. And then on top of that, I put that large blue starfish, which also helped to add a little bit more blue to the layout. So now I'm adding some flamingos. I'm putting them up on top of the waves. I have two facing each other, and then I have a little one all the way off to the right. And then there were a number of these really beautiful tropical looking flowers. So I thought that I would layer those in with those flamingos. And this photo is of my daughter Danielle. She went to the Dominican Republic a couple of years ago, and I've been working on her album for quite a while. I love scrapbooking pictures of the beach and tropical places, so I was really happy to have all of these photos that she took for this vacation. I love this little starfish. His head and part of his body were blue, but there was also some pink and some orange in there. I thought that he fit in really nicely on this layout. And then I tucked some more of those yellow flowers into all of the different clusters. I wanted to add some photo corners to the layout. That's something that I really love to do. And I was thinking that pink would be a good color because I have a lot of hints of pink, but I would like to bring a little bit of pink close to the photo. I like the way the pink goes along with the blue. So I punched out 4 photo corners and then I attached them down to the 4 corners of the photo. And then I wanted to add some jewels to the layout. I added kind of an unusual jewel. I was shopping in a thrift store and I found this big pack. You could see it in the upper right hand corner of jewels that are just kind of like bubbles, and I think they're meant for home decor, but I thought that they would look really nice on a beach themed layout, so I added some of those. The whole pack of them was $2. It filled up a whole jar that's sitting on my scrapbooking desk, and they worked really well because they have a flat back, so perfect little bubbles on an ocean layout. And I'm using glossy accents to attach all of these down to the layout. Whenever I have sequins or gems or jewels of any kind, I find that glossy accents works better than any other adhesive that I've used. I added some pearls to the photo corners. And then I also started to add some little teeny tiny jewels. These are very small in size next to the bubbles, but they are a little bit more shiny, so I thought that would add a nice touch. They are called stone stickers, and they're made by a company called Angel's Crafts. I spread those tiny jewels across the cut file and the background, and that was the last touch. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I have really been enjoying looking at some of the layouts that I've made over the year and catching up on my videos. And if you are interested, I will have many more coming out on my channel very soon. As I mentioned, this is an older kit, but every month My Creative Scrapbook comes out with gorgeous kits. My favorite is the limited edition kit, but they have 4 different kits for you to choose from. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.